Cachamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
We're glad you're here for the 22nd beta release of the GeoGearHeads. As usual, I'm Daryl W4 with the Bad Cop, but this time we're actually testing out that Google Plus on Air, Hangouts on Air that we've been talking about. This is the first time we're running this test and the last major hurdle to losing that beta tag. We won't know how it goes until we're done, kind of course, but if all goes well, you might be able to watch us in a live stream, the recording session only, on Thursday nights, a little after 9 p.m. Eastern or 6 p.m. Pacific through Google Plus and through YouTube.
That is very exciting. Unfortunately, there's no means for audience interaction short of the comments on the Hangouts post. I'm going to miss the relative anonymity of the audio-only podcast, to be honest with you. I said for years that I have a face for radio. But next week, we're going to talk about gearing up your bicycle. We'd love to have your comments on that and tonight's topic, or really anything else we've ever talked about. All you need to do is call our voicemail line at 206-350-3647 and leave us a message. If you'd rather not call, you can email us at geogearheads@cachamaniacs.com with an audio file or text, and of course, there's social media.
Now we'll get into the topic for tonight shortly, but we wanted to share this feedback from Nighthawk 700 via Google+. He said, I don't have a first aid app, but I use an ICE, in case of emergency, app on my Droid. Just in case something should happen, it gives the emergency contact info, docs, phone number, and insurance information. Now that is a good, quick, easy way to do it, and a lot of people I know will do that on their wallpaper that they have on their lock screen as well. And that's something that a lot of the emergency personnel really like. So not something that we talked about last week, but something very, very good to have just in your daily life.
I've seen this for a long time on feature phones. They would put in an ICE entry into the phone book, so you'd have somebody to contact in case the phone is found or you're injured and unable to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem is with locking your phones now, which is always a good idea. You really can't do that like you used to be able to, because you can't get in to, you can't unlock and get in if emergency personnel need to get in when you've been disabled. Exactly.
And we carry so much more data on our phones than we used to. That's always a good idea, to keep it locked. So tonight we're going to talk with A.C. Fever, a fellow geocacher and crime analyst for the Bloomington, Illinois Police Department. He's a 10-year veteran of the Bloomington Police Department as a crime analyst. Certified crime analyst by the International Association of Law Enforcement Intelligence Analysts, and 2-year geocaching experience and member of the Central Illinois Geocaching Association. Welcome.
Hello, glad to be here.
That's a lot of titles. You seem like an important person.
It's not as impressive as it sounds.
Oh, okay. So tell us a little bit of your background. How long have you been in law enforcement?
I've been in law enforcement now for just over 10 years. The entire 10 years I've been a crime analyst with Bloomington, Illinois. In a nutshell, crime analysis is looking for trends and patterns and series in crime and tries to forecast the next one. So, for example, if we have a certain number of burglaries that happen in the same time, same general area of town, what we would do is try to predict and tell officers, be in this area around this general time, maybe here's our suspect description, and give us better odds for apprehending the criminals. And that's really, in a nutshell, what crime analysis is all about.
Cool.
Well, we're really glad that you actually contacted us about the social media safety, because it has been popping up a lot in the media. A lot of it actually comes from some of the changes in Facebook's handling of stuff, really. There's a great video that we just caught today, but it was posted back May 4th, and we'll actually include a link to it called I Have Timeline. It's absolutely hysterical.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that kind of really sums up how some people are aware, but other people aren't aware of a lot of the issues that surround posting things to social media. And there's a story just a couple of days ago on Mashable about a girl who posted some pictures of money on Facebook, and some robbers came and broke into her home.
Yeah, and that's becoming a more common issue as people are increasingly using services such as Facebook and Twitter and Foursquare and the numerous other social media sites on their cell phones to say where they are almost all the time.
And this is an issue for geocaching as well. One of my big things about geocaching.com has been when I really first started getting to caching, what we had done is post live field notes through the WAP interface, or not even field notes, but live postings. And then it occurred to me that that's probably not such a good idea, because someone can kind of follow me around if they really wanted to by those postings.
Absolutely. And now in the last few weeks, as geocaching.com, it's my understanding that they've integrated more with Facebook, more with Twitter, doing field notes that can be uploaded either instantly to Twitter, or you can save them up for later and post your finds to Twitter, which I think is a much, much safer thing to do once you're at home. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody wants to get 50 or 60 or sometimes 100 tweets immediately of every geocache that you found.
Yeah, that's one of the things we actually talked a little bit about with Eric, is you really have to be careful with the cross-posting to not annoy your followers. We've seen a number of people unsubscribe from other cachers' streams, especially on Twitter, because that was the one that they had working well first, just because they didn't like this huge flood of caches. I remember one in particular went out on the ET highway, forgot to turn it off, and when he came back, he had lost over half of his followers.
Well, to be honest with you, I'd rather get 50 at one shot than 50 throughout the entire day.
Especially if you have like the SMS notifications on, that can be a real problem, and a lot of people have to pay for those. But the field notes, I think, are a lot better than posting the live logs, and if you're using one of the apps that will post the live logs, keep in mind you probably don't want to do that, because should someone really want to target you, they can figure out who you are on geocaching.com. If you post that, they probably are going to know that you're not at home.
Absolutely.
You know, or they can even follow you around that way.
Absolutely. But really, at least with geocaching.com, somebody would know that you're geocaching, and that kind of gives you a little bit of safety. You know, they would have to go to that site and look for it specifically.
And they would have to know your caching name, which necessarily doesn't correspond to Twitter or Facebook.
Correct.
Now let's get into some Twitter issues, because Twitter is really just this open-ended broadcast service, and they were one of the first that I actually heard anything happening from. One of the early ones had been a blogger who actually went on vacation, and he tweeted, you know, hey, I'm going on vacation. When he came back, his house had been taken for anything that was worth anything.
Yeah, and really with Twitter, it has such a deep integration with so many other services, especially something like Foursquare, where you're checking in and out of various locations all the time, and it can be put on Twitter. And because of that, it can actually be shown on a map. Bing Maps being one of the worst offenders, if you will, for showing you where you are. And think about this, guys. Would you call your local newspaper every day and say, I'm leaving my house at 8 a.m., I'm at work by 9, no, by the way, here's where I work, I go to lunch, I come back home, and you do that day after day, and then say, oh, print that every single day. I don't think you guys would do that. So why do we do that through social media and tell the whole world where we are, where we've been, and develop these patterns to show what my daily life is like?
Yeah, and you had provided a link to a really handy resource to kind of scare people, which is bing.com/Twitter/maps, and again, we'll link to that in the show notes, where you can actually do searches for popular caching names, and you actually tried a couple of them, and it's scary at what's actually included in there.
Yeah, and I admit I tried to put your guys' Twitter names in there, and I couldn't find anything, so you guys are okay.
Woohoo!
But I did find one well-known cacher, and you can search for a specific name in Bing Maps, or you can simply look at your hometown, and you can see everybody who's tweeting who has some type of location services turned on. And when you look at that, and you look at a specific user, you can very quickly see not only what time they're doing everything, but it also puts that dot right on your house, right on your employer, right down your school. And, you know, if you're looking at that map and it's real time, and I'm a bad guy, and I don't have to know who you are. I can just look and see, oh, hey, this person is 50 miles away because they just tweeted that they're at lunch, and they're so far from home, I know there's nobody there. And next thing you know, your home gets burglarized.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've done is I actually have two separate accounts on Twitter. I have the account where I will post some of that information for just my closest friends, because I actually kind of think of that as like a safety net. You know, should something happen, it's posting my field notes, and you know, I can post locations from a number of other location services like Foursquare to that. So should something happen and I don't come back, my friends then can go back and use that to kind of try to figure out where I was. But they're the only ones that have access to it. That's a locked-down, protected account. And then I have the public version, which anyone can get to. And with Twitter, it's one or the other. You don't have the option of locking down just certain tweets.
No, everything goes out. Right. And with this, you really don't need to pay off the kid at the corner to watch to see if anybody's coming home. You just follow them on Twitter and find out when they left.
Indeed. Yeah, and I do have some worries about things like the direct messages going public accidentally sometime, or you know, my private stream going public at some point. But again, that information is old, and it's not the daily pattern stuff, so that's not as much of a worry. But we have seen on Facebook things like private photos actually posted publicly. Mark Zuckerberg most famously had one of his albums opened up to the public via a bug.
And it doesn't take much for a criminal to get into your life, get into your head, get into your way of doing things, and get into where you live. And that's what's scary about all these mapping services is, especially with Bing, Bing, you can get aerial overheads, but it also does a 45-degree angle photograph. And you can look at all sides of a person's house. Google, you know, you have the Google Street View, and they can virtually be standing on your front porch. And Daryl, I believe you put out a media link in some of the materials you gave me, where in England, 78% of burglars admitted that they're using some type of social media and Google Street View to case out their potential targets.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I caught through a number of the stories was Facebook appears to have been now the most popular method of casing targets in the UK specifically, but it looks like it's Europe as a whole. This is the big way, and there's a very simple hack that you can get around some of the privacy settings apparently that was demonstrated to at least one of the reporters in one of those stories. So even if you do have your Facebook profile locked down a little bit, the nefarious users can still figure out a way in.
Yeah, it's a pretty scary thought when you really think about it.
Yeah, it really is very scary because there's a few people who have always said, if you want to consider anything private, never post it to the internet, no matter what.
Exactly. Anything on the internet is, I consider, public information. Privacy is gone.
Yeah, and there's so much that we can get out of the location services and things like that that we really want to take advantage of. So you kind of have to assume some of that responsibility of anything I post here might get turned into a public sphere. you just have to kind of do your best and be careful about it and figure out how much of that risk you're willing to assume.
Correct, yeah. I definitely don't want to scare anybody away from using social media. I think there's a lot of good uses for social media, reconnecting with friends, and of course there's a lot of business models on it. But people really do need to slow down and stop and think, what am I posting here? How can this possibly be used against me? Or the photos that you post or comments that you make about people. You know, how would it look if my mom was reading this? You know, that's what you got to kind of think about.
Yeah, there's a lot of those common sense issues. And we've mentioned specifically Twitter, Facebook, and Foursquare, but it's certainly not limited to that. We know a lot of our users are on Google+, which does have the benefit of being able to individually control your security, your sharing preferences per post. However, it's not too hard, especially if you're in the apps, to accidentally post something publicly while you're still posting to individual people. So you really do have to be careful. And who knows, Google might have a issue kind of like Facebook had where stuff gets turned on publicly. So it really is important to not do too much. And even emails. Emails are one of the worst things, too, if you do anything that you don't want to get around, because emails can be copied and saved anywhere and printed and shared in any way. And we've heard many, many stories about people being embarrassed by an email about a client that was printed and sent to the client or forwarded to the client or something like that.
Oh, yeah, we're taught over and over again never to author an email at work out of anger. Give yourself 15 minutes and calm down before something bad is said.
Yeah, exactly.
But getting back to Google+, I know Google+ does have an option there that says you can view your profile as somebody else. And it'll kind of let you see what you're allowing other people to see, whether it's as a friend or somebody else in your circles or somebody who's not with your circles at all. And that's kind of a good way to see what you are posting. And one of the things that I would recommend is go to somebody else's house so you don't have any chances of any kind of caching issues with your computer, but go find somebody who you're not a friend with or who's not following you or anything, and have them look up your name and go through your Facebook, go through your Twitter, and make sure that your security settings are really doing what you think they're doing. We've heard a lot of stories that people say, I thought I had my security locked down and apparently I didn't, and things are getting out. It's really worth it to take the time to see what you're really putting out there.
That is a really good piece of advice. And one other thing we didn't touch on, even if you have your geolocation turned off on your tweets or Facebook or Google+, if you take a picture with your smartphone, that can be geotagged as well.
Absolutely, and it's easy for people to get information. Now, I do believe Facebook, if you post photos, it does strip that EXIF data from the JPEGs.
Okay.
But other services like Pinterest or PhotoBucket, I'm not certain if that happens or not.
Well, and some services have an option to strip it. Like Flickr, you can have it either hide or show the EXIF data. But especially when you're getting into a lot of those photo sharing services, and Google Plus actually got into some hot water over this because they were stripping the EXIF data, and a lot of the photographers got very displeased because that also meant all of the copyright data and all of the technical information was stripped out, and the photographers really like having that stuff, especially copyright information.
Sure.
So they're now actually honoring the EXIF data, and a lot of the time, even if the service is stripping out that data, it's still in the original file. And in some cases, APIs can get that EXIF data out, and we've seen some of those things appear on maps from some of the services, even though the location services or the EXIF data was set to be stripped out of those images. So it's best, if you are concerned, to not include that EXIF data when you do the upload.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Now, I have a question. Do you have any specific cases where you've seen social media be an influence in the crime?
We have not seen. I did look through our reports over about the last 8 years or so that Facebook has been around. I couldn't find anything locally in Bloomington, Illinois, where somebody said, "Hey, I Facebooked or I tweeted or something, and now I've been robbed or burglarized. What we do see much, much more common is people picking fights on Facebook with each other. And they get into this online argument, which then turns into an actual physical fight later on. That's what we usually see much, much more, or above all else, over property crime or anything like that. We actually have people call the police department fairly regularly to say, hey, I was looking at my kid's Facebook and it says there's going to be a fight on this day after school. And more times than not, it's actually true. It happens. And that's actually kind of good for us because we get that heads up as the police and can be informed ahead of time to try to stop some of these things or at least keep them from escalating before somebody gets seriously hurt.
Yeah, so some good out of something that could very easily turn very bad.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, I do think as much as we're talking about this, as much as we do need to be careful about it, it's kind of being blown out of proportion as to the percentage of people who have been affected by it. But I think that percentage is going to continue to go up as it becomes more and more mainstream. And one of the things to consider is the more mainstream the service is, the more vulnerable it is to being used for nefarious purposes.
And I think a lot of the rise in the cases of social media being used against people really has also correlated with the expansion of use of smartphones. A lot of people now are using smartphones as their only computing device and may not fully understand all the ins and outs of these little settings inside of these apps. And it's getting them into trouble, that they're not sitting down and taking the time to truly understand what they're using.
Absolutely, and we're talking about geotagging of photos. That's something you never had to worry about from the computer, or geotagging your location on Twitter or Facebook or Foursquare, because your computer doesn't have the GPS built in usually. So it's not something that you had to think about. But on your phone, you have that GPS, or at least a location service by triangulation of towers, which can get you down to, at worst, a few block range.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And
yes,
don't forget,
thank you so much.
And don't forget that next week we're going to be talking about cycling and how to gear out your bike for that. So if you have any comments on that, or if you want to comment on any of the social media stuff that we talked about tonight, please, by all means, drop us an email or give us a call. And Bad Cop, why don't you give us that information right now?
Well, I certainly will. Check the Cacheamaniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by calling 206-350-3647, by emailing geogearheads at cacheamaniacs.com, or through social media that we just talked about. Your support helps keep the Cacheamaniac shows coming, so please consider making a PayPal donation through the link on our website to support the Cacheamaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. This show is copyright 2012 by Daryl Wattenberg, all rights reserved.